All right, gang. First of all, thanks for coming to the Excerpt channel and checking out this excerpt, clip, if you will, of an ASP podcast episode from the recent past. So you know it's not a whole episode. Whole episodes are available only on the app in the video form. You can listen anywhere you want, any podcast outlet. Listen to the audio version, not a problem. For the video version, if you want to watch the whole thing, get the app. It is literally free to watch on the app. No payment, no subscription required. Go over there, check it out, and I hope you enjoy the clip. Well, alrighty, gang. Welcome back to the Active Self-Protection Podcast. I'm yet again your host, Mike Williver, and I remain...
Lucky Gunner is my recommended trusted provider of freedom seeds for range or defensive use. In-stock, good prices, and rocket-fast shipping are why I go back again and again. Because of new guidelines, I can't link their site or say it, but you're smart, and you can find it with a simple Google search. Stick it to the man by paying them a visit today.
With any luck at all. Your favorite former Fed with me today is a new friend of mine. His name is Ed. Ed is from the beautiful northwest of the United States. He is married. He is on his church security team. He is a millwright. We're going to ask him what that means. Don't worry. And a competitive shooter as well. Ed, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well today, Mike. And yourself?
Well, I'm doing really good. I can't thank you enough for coming on. He and I have been emailing back and forth since I don't know, June or earlier than June about this, trying to get this set up. So we finally got together. So it makes me very happy. So Ed, what is a mill? I've heard of a playwright. Never heard of a millwright. What does a millwright do exactly? What does that mean?
A millwright, I turn wrenches. I'm basically a mechanic on stationary equipment. So I work in a mill and that cuts up trees and turns them into lumber. So I'm actually now I work on fire protection systems. So as a sprinkler man. So
very good. And so talk to us real quick about your competitive shooting career. We always talk. I mean, I say this probably too much. You and I spoke before we hit the record button, and you mentioned you were in competitive shooting, and the reason you started doing that is so that you could improve your personal shooting in case it ever came in handy. So how long have you been doing that? And are you doing IDPA, or what kind of competitive shooting are you doing?
So I started with a bowling pin match. And the quote from the gentleman that runs the match is that he had never seen anybody as bad as I was that stuck it out. And I said, hey, what do you mean by that? And he says, Ed, generally people just shake their head and walk away when they're that bad. And I said, I knew I was awful and I just wanted to get better. And so I have gone from being an absolutely terrible handgun shooter to I've made B class in revolver. And so I shot revolvers for about 8 years after starting with semi-autos. And I've gone back to bottom feeders again and enjoying having a little more ammo on tap. So
yeah, absolutely. So this brings up something I've always wanted to mention on the show, and that is, as an instructor, people who are not performing where they would like to be performing as a shooter. This is really any student of any discipline, really. You have two kinds of people. You have troubled shooters, people having difficulty but want to get better. Then you have problem shooters who deny there's a problem and they just do whatever they want to do. And I loved, my favorite thing as an instructor was coming alongside a student who was struggling and willing to learn, and they emptied that cup so that we could pour a little bit more in, and was willing to learn and willing to admit they don't know everything. And I love a student like that because it's so rewarding to take someone who wants to get better but is struggling and help, lift them up to the point where they're proficient. And they go on that spectrum from, I think I said this before as well, unconscious incompetence to unconscious competence. So unconscious incompetence means you don't know that you're not good at something, right? Imagine compared to driving a car. When you first drive a car, everything you do, you're like, how soon do I start hitting the brake? How hard do I hit the brake? How hard do I hit the gas? When do I turn my turn signal on? How far do I turn the wheel? All this stuff is you have to think about it a lot. And after a while, you become consciously competent where you're like, okay, I know what I'm doing, but I still have to think about it. And the goal is to get unconsciously competent, so where you don't have to think about it. So after a year or so of driving, you just hop in the car and you go into autopilot. And that's where I'd like to see my students get with their firearms. They don't have to think about their draw stroke. They don't have to think about how heavy is the trigger pull or their grip or their stance or anything like that. So it's very encouraging to hear. Other than competitive shooting, what else, if anything, have you endeavored to work on as far as your self defense training?
Well, with the competitive shooting, I've also do speed steel and USPSA and I-Core, which is revolvers only. Um, and so worked very hard at getting better with that. I don't have any other defensive skills. Um, I've never encountered anything that pushed me into a mindset of thinking that I needed to as I was growing up. I grew up out in the country, grew up shooting rifles and hunting and enjoying that. Spent 6 years in the Air Force. It's almost like being in the military. Um, they like to tease us and call it the chair force. I didn't hear that until I got out.
Okay.
But yeah, I enjoyed my time in. Was glad to get out when I got out. So I don't really have any. I took wrestling in high school my senior year, so I guess I have used that a couple times, more lightheartedly than anything. If somebody messing with me and taking them to the ground, easy enough. They didn't expect it, so you know. But
Right on. So your incident happened about how long ago?
early part of June.
Okay, so it's been a, a matter of months or weeks, and not very long. The last
Yeah.
guy I had on his incident happened in 2017, so it's nice to have a more recent one on it. So yeah, in your own words, just kind of walk us through what happened. Where were you? What were you doing? What alerted you to the fact that there was trouble? Kind of walk us through your incident in your own words.
You bet. I go out to the dog park real often, and know most of the people at that time of the evening when I go out there. I go out in the evening to avoid um, larger groups of people and have fewer conflicts with other dogs and other people. So um, it was. I'd been out there for a couple hours and was ready to go home and gone out and gotten in my truck about 9 o'clock in the evening. Still daylight up here, still very much light. And I'd gotten my dog in the truck and was putting my earbuds in my ear and looked up and saw a gentleman walk by the front of my truck real quick. I hadn't seen him coming. I was I normally lock my doors, and I believe I had them locked. I was just getting ready for the drive home for about 15 minutes. And he went by real fast, and I saw on the far side he had in his fist, he had balled up what looked to me like a pretty good sized knife. And he was marching really fast. He had a backpack on, had a coat on, a little warm for the coat, but you know, didn't stand out too bad. But he didn't have a dog. And there was a group of ladies underneath the pavilion. Um, I think there were 4 or 5 ladies and one teenage girl, and a couple at the far end of the dog park when I'd gotten up and left. And so he's coming in and he marches by my truck, and he's got my full attention because he's got a knife out in his hand, and he went right up to the gate and opened the gate and went in, and all the alarms started going off, and I'm thinking, yeah, no, this is not good. And so I jumped back out of my truck and took off after him to follow him into the dog park. And there's 2 gates, so you don't lose dogs so easy. You open one, close it, and so he'd gotten through the gates before I got to the first one. And so I went in, closed it, opened the next one, closed it, turned around and looking, and was making a beeline over to the pavilion where the women were at. That's where he headed. And
Real quick, describe this guy for me. Does he strike you as a homeless guy, crazy person, gangbanger, or just a regular guy? How would you describe him in your mind?
no, he looked like a homeless guy. He didn't look real rough as far as like he didn't look stoned out of his mind.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he seemed to be in control of himself for the most part, just moving real quick. And I'm getting older. I just turned 58 today, and he's moving faster than I could walk. And so I thought, I'm losing this foot race, and decided to actually run after him. And I can't say that I've run since my mid 30s.
Right.
And I'm like, oh yeah, I can still run. And I think this kind of plays a part in my mindset here a little bit, is that I've got an artificial right hip and an artificial knee on the other side. And so they've told me not to run now that I have this new knee. And so, except in emergencies, and I figured this was an emergency.
Yeah.
He actually got around this small tree, evergreen tree, so I couldn't see him at that point. So I'm running to get around the tree to see where he went. And he went to the far side of the pavilion. It's got 2 picnic tables underneath it, and the group of ladies right there, they were all just talking. Didn't notice him at all, paid him no attention at all. And so when I got around the tree and saw that, I just slowed my roll. I didn't want him seeing me running up on him. And I wanted to get my heart rate back under control.